Hello folks, welcome to the Darktable Landscapes video. In this one we're going to be looking at this shot from the Lake District. This is kind of the walking down the hill after you've been out for sunrise kind of shot, so the light is kind of past its best. It's not golden hour anymore, but there's still some light to be had, and this is obviously a pretty nice view. But the processing for this kind of shot tends to vary from my standard kind of high contrast, high drama golden hour sunrise sunset shots. And I tend to go for something a bit more kind of editorial, a bit more stylized, more color grading involved perhaps. So let's have a look at this one. I'm going to kind of try and mark on here with my little screenwriting tool here what I want to achieve. So the first thing is that the angle is all wrong. We're kind of tilted to this side, so we'll see if we can get rid of that. And then the sky is maybe too blue. So we'll kind of desaturate that, and the greens are too green here. I would like to kind of fade those a little bit and just emphasize the kind of autumnal colors. You can see that the bracken is kind of starting to turn brown here on the fell side, so we'll kind of emphasize that. And we'll maybe try and remove these cars down here in the car park at the bottom of the fell, and just generally go for a slightly more kind of faded and stylized, dare I say it, Instagram friendly look. So let's see what we can do. So first things first, let's straighten this up. So we'll use the rotate module. Now you can right click and drag anywhere in the photo to straighten out, but that generally works best when you have a straight line to kind of follow, like the horizon, for example, which I don't really have in this one. So I'm just going to undo that, and I'm just going to use the module itself. So pop that on, rotate in perspective. I will also put the guides on, and let's just change the color here to cyan so I can see what I'm doing a little easier, and maybe change the grid from rule of thirds to grid so I've got more lines to work with as well. And then I can just drag this along and just kind of eyeball it. I think that's about right. Yeah, okay, I'm happy with that. And now we'll do our kind of basic adjustments. So I'm using a Fuji camera, an X-T20, so I'm going to change my demosaicing to 3-pass Markerstein. You probably won't need to do that if you have anything other than a Fuji camera. And color calibration, let's have a look. So our white balance, essentially. That's maybe a tad warm, maybe not too bad for now. We'll maybe come back to that in a moment. And exposure is probably about right. Actually, let's just nudge it up. We've got a little bit of room on the histogram. And if we go to our waveform, you can see there's still some room at the top. So we kind of almost wash out the brighter parts of the image to a certain extent. So maybe, yeah, we don't want to completely blow things out, obviously. Okay. Now we'll do some basic contrast adjustments. So color balance RGB, as usual. So I don't want to kind of make this too vibrant. We've got strong sunlight. It's the end of summer, beginning of autumn, so there's lots of still lots of lush green grass around. The trees only just kind of turning, maybe like these ones here, for example, just turning, but otherwise I don't want it to kind of be too bright and colourful and postcardy. So I'm going to actually drop vibrance a little bit, maybe 5% minus, and not add too much contrast, just a touch. Likewise, just a touch of stepped saturation grading. So that's more saturation in the shadows, slightly less in midtones, less still in the highlights. And now let's drop our shadows down a fair bit, say about 15% or so, I think. Yeah. Boost our mids. And maybe let's push our highlights a little bit. Still okay on the waveform. And I'm not going to do any color grading. Sometimes I will do some color grading here in the 4 ways tab, but I think I'll leave it off for this one, I think. And we'll do some proper color grading, if you like, with RGB primaries. So let's turn that on. Let's see what we can do here. Probably want to drop my red hue a little bit, move it over to the left towards kind of magenta. Use my red purity. Yeah. That's the right way to go. And then we'll drop our green hue and green purity. Drop our blue, push our purity up a bit. There we go. So we've just taken some of that real green out of things and just shifted it slightly more towards a kind of autumnal tone. We'll continue some color grading with color equalizer, so that's a little bit more kind of targeted, if you like. And the first thing I want to do is take the blue out of the sky, so click on our eyedropper here, and sure enough, blue is blue, so thank goodness for the eyedropper tool. Just drop that saturation down, and again we'll kind of just check our histograms here and here. Drop that down. And maybe just shift our yellows a little bit towards orange as well. So you can see we've gone from that kind of blue sky, bluebird, postcardy kind of colour tone to slightly more faded and autumnal treatment. Okay, now I may just pop back into colour balance RGB and just drop our our mids, I think, a little bit. We're getting a little bit bright. Maybe drop our highs as well. It's more like it. We're starting to get a little bit kind of white on this dry stone wall, which isn't really white. So drop that down a little bit more, I think. That's fine. And now for kind of clarity, contrast equalizer. We'll roll our mouse wheel down. Nice and big. Now I could add clarity by dragging up, but what I actually want to do is go the other way. I think I'll just kind of soften it off. That's a little too much. Just take that digital sharpness out of things. Yeah. Give it a little bit more, give it a bit of haze if you like. So that's fine. And we'll duplicate this with a right click. And then we will add some texture. Dragging up the ends here. There we go. Okay, and now we'll add a little bit of a vignette. So we'll duplicate our exposure, go to a drawn mask, choose the ellipse. We'll pop it on our photo. Just kind of want to focus the attention really on this central valley. Bring that in a little bit with shift and roll. We'll invert the mask so that we're affecting everything outside this oval. We can drop this down. Just add a little bit of depth. There we go. And let's maybe add a little bit of mid-tone contrast just to pull out a little bit of detail without going overboard. So I'm going to duplicate my color balance RGB with a right click here. And then we need to select our midtones. So we're going to use the parametric mask for this. And we're using the G channel, which is the kind of essentially the luminosity values, the lightness values of the image. And we want to deselect the darks, deselect the lights, and just select the midtones. So we'll turn on our masking preview. And at the moment, everything is selected, everything is yellow. And then we're going to drag our darks in. So we're deselecting the darkest parts of the image, which is obviously the areas in shadow. And then we'll drag back just to soften the transition. And then we'll deselect the brightest parts of the image, which is the sky and the very sunlit areas. Just selecting our midtones and again, dragging back to soften off the transition. And we'll give a little bit of a feather as well. There we go. And then we can turn off our preview. Now we can just add a little bit of contrast. It's easy to overdo in our midtones. So if I crank it way up, you can see where it's being applied visually, if you like. You can see it's kind of bringing out the fells in the distance, but we don't want to do that too much. I like that kind of morning haze a little bit. So just a touch. Less is always more. There we go. Okay, now we'll do some finishing touches. So sharpening, diffuse and sharpen module. And we'll use the presets. So the first thing we'll use is Sharpen Demosaicing No AA Filter. And then we will right click to duplicate and choose the other preset. We'll use Lens Deblur Soft. It's a pretty sharp lens as it is. And then we will do one more. We'll use some local contrast. So local contrast fast. And that can be a little strong. So I'm going to do my usual thing of using a uniform mask, which essentially selects the whole image, or the whole module, I should say, really. And we'll just turn that down to about 50% or so, just so it's not quite as strong an effect. Still there, but not so in your face. So here's the before and after. So we start off with a very green image, blue sky, green fields, and we kind of wanted to go for a more autumnal tone. So we've kept the rotation on for the first image just to avoid that kind of shift in perspective that you get from the rotation. But we can see that we've really shifted that more towards the autumnal tones. We've gone less high contrast, washed out the sky a little bit so that we're not getting too much detail there to distract from the view itself. And overall just gone for a much more kind of stylized, almost vintage look, if you like. Okay, so there's our finished image. Thank you for coming along and watching, as ever. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, you can leave a super thanks. Do like and subscribe if you haven't liked and subscribed already. Thanks again for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.